Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Shout out to our sponsor, Chessable. My guest this week is Women's FIDE Master, Maaike Keetman. Maaike is the VP of Content for Chessable, where she is also an author. Her course on the Nimzo-Indian defense, entitled The Fierce Nimzo-Indian, is excellent. I highly recommend it. There's a link in the show notes if you want to check it out. Maaike is also active with the ChessQueens Foundation, which promotes chess among women and girls in the Netherlands. We covered a number of topics, including chess improvement, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. That's coming up next. Don't move.
Welcome to the Chess Angle. This is not your typical chess podcast. If you're an amateur or club-level player, the Chess Angle is for you. Our content is aimed at busy adults who are serious about the game but have limited study time. Featured guests include both amateur and titled players alike. And now, here's your host, Director of the Long Island Chess Club, Neil Bellon.
Hey, Maaike, good to see you. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the invite. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So let me jump right in. You recently played in the Dutch Women's Championship, and I know you posted a few positions on Twitter. That rook d6 move against Kazarian was really good. Enjoyed that, but I was hoping you could tell us about that whole experience, what that was like.
Yeah, of course. I always play in the championship, or always for the past 5 years. I've been invited, luckily. This year it was a bit different than usual. Often we played in summer, but now it was around Christmas time. And maybe that was the reason that some people did not want to participate, because during the tournament we had a Christmas break to go home and then play a few more rounds. So it was a bit different than usual. So that's why we only had 6 players instead of 8. And we played a bit of a strange format. So you first play all opponents, and then they look at the standing, and then number 1 and 2 play a match, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6. So the goal was just to not be 5 and 6, because, well, then you're playing for last place, which is a bit sad. And luckily I managed that. I ended up in 3rd and 4th. And in the end, I sadly ended 4th place, but I can still be happy with that.
Okay. Any memorable moments or takeaways? Any specific games that stand out?
Yeah, definitely the one against Kazarian that you mentioned. It's funny, we know each other for a very long time. We're about the same age, and we've been playing each other since 2008, which is a very long time for me, at least. So we might have played like 40 games against each other, and many of them go for the French, where I'm white and she's black. And I was just thinking, which line have we never played before? And that's how I ended up with this 3 bishop d3 variation, hoping to surprise her, but I never could have imagined it would work out this well, because it's objectively mostly a surprise weapon. I don't know many people who play it as their main weapon, but I can recommend it. It worked out quite well this time.
All right. And you like that, like stylistically, you like to mix it up. Like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but your thought process is basically, what can I put in front of my opponent that she's never seen before, correct?
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma. When you look at their games in a database, you can go for 2 things. Either you pick something where you can find games from them so that you know, oh, they played it before and I can prepare it exactly. Or maybe you think, let me play this. They've never seen it. They might be surprised. It's a bit of a gamble. And sometimes you want to play it safe. And sometimes you think, well, I really want to play for win today. Let's take a gamble. And they do go wrong sometimes. So this is not advice you should follow every day.
Yeah, no, because I was looking at some of the positions, and definitely very interesting. And speaking of that kind of style, Tal and Judith Polgar, I know, are influences of yours. So maybe you could share how they helped your chess development and affected your style of play.
For sure. I think many people get asked the question, oh, what's your favorite world champion? And I never had to think about it. It was always Tal. Something about him is just so magical that no one else can do what he does. You can't replicate it, because if you try, well, I'm sure people do it sometimes. And then it turns out, when I sacrifice, maybe it doesn't work out. So there's something about him. He also was quite active as a writer. One of his most famous books is The Life and Games of Mikhail Tal. And you also have Attacking with Michael Tal, together with Damsky. So you could learn a lot from him as well because he wrote so much. So if you're interested in his games, there's so many resources you can find by himself. So that's really good. But my second favorite world champion is actually Alekhine. So I would recommend learning from him as well. He was also very original and very attacking.
Yeah, and what's funny about Alekhine and Tal, if you put their games in an engine, it looks like they should be losing. Like the engine is like, what? But it was so psychologically stressful for the opponent that it doesn't matter if the engine says it was a bad move. If the opponent is thrown off and doesn't know what to do, that's all you need. But it's funny because like I said, you'll put a game of Tal in the engine, and it's like he should have lost. But it just goes to show you that engines are not the same as when two humans play. It's just a different interpretation.
For sure, yeah. I think engines can defend so well, but most humans just crack under either psychological pressure or often time pressure causes you to blunder as well. It's so hard when your opponent is attacking you, coming at you with everything he or she has, and you're like, maybe I'll survive, but how will I do it? And what if I don't? And you just get so nervous that you might lose just from the stress, not even the position, just the stress.
Absolutely. That happens at the club level all the time. The slightest somebody says boo, they simply aim their queen or a bishop towards h7 or something like that. And everybody freaks out. And then of course they'll make an unnecessary defensive move. And then, their position's even worse. So
yeah, they actually make the end come faster for themselves. The opponent sometimes doesn't even have to do anything just by the whole thought of, maybe I'll get mated. Let me push h6. And then it turns out it's a weakness later. Yeah, you can definitely be your own worst enemy when it comes to that.
Now, speaking of your training and development, I'm very curious about this step-by-step method. I know a little about it. I know it involves, I think it's 6 manuals, and you have to work through the exercises. And I know that you use this. I'm very curious if you could tell us about that, like how that worked and how much time you spent doing it and how it helped you grow.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think in the Netherlands, where I'm from, this is the most common method. If you join a chess club as a kid, then the teachers will use this method to teach a group of kids. So you go to the club weekly and they teach one lesson from the book weekly. So they use the manual, and then the kids get the homework from the exercise books and they hand it in and the teacher grades it. So it's very methodical. And I think one book covers about 1 year. And at the end of the year, there's even an exam. So you can get like a degree. I think it's very motivating for kids. I knew other kids my age hang them on the wall and you get like a grade, and then you can ask the other kids, how did you do? I remember at local youth tournaments, the first question when you sat down and had to play them was, which step are you in? Like every single kid would ask each other that, like it's a competition. So everyone used it. I think they're very tactically focused. So it's a lot of tactical exercises. When you get a bit further, there are some strategic teams, a little bit of openings. They teach like the 3 golden rules of the opening. Is that a common thing outside of step method?
Yeah, well, here in the States, everything is develop your pieces, don't move the same piece twice in the opening, all that usual stuff. I don't know how that compares to.
Yeah, it's indeed put a pawn in the center, develop your pieces, bring your king to safety. That's like the 3 golden rules. So that's about the opening strategy, and the rest is a lot of tactics, but they're really good. They have like 3 workbooks per step. You can just do the normal one, but they also have one they call extra and one they call plus. And I just loved solving them. My family made a game out of them where we would have a timer and then just try to go through the whole book as fast as we could and then compete with each other. So maybe it's a bit obsessive, but yeah, I definitely solved a lot of tactics. And I think it still helps me to this day. So you don't have to use this method, but training tactics, I don't think anyone could recommend against that, because they could decide a game so easily. Even if you're winning and you blunder a fork, you might still lose. It's not like in football or soccer, I don't know how to call it, when if you're 10-0 up, you can never lose. But in chess, you can still lose. So if you don't train your tactics, you can spoil whatever good position you have. So yeah, really recommend it. Train your tactics.
Now, I'm just curious with the step-by-step with openings.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't really play this opening or learn, we're going to teach you the Sicilian. It was more like just understand the opening principles. Like how did you develop an opening repertoire from those books, or was that separate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think every kid almost starts with E4, E5. They might learn you a bit about that, very classical, but I developed my own opening repertoire a bit with my first trainer, who was actually the same trainer as at the club, but once a week we did some private lessons, and he just taught me the openings he played. So he taught me the Caro-Kann, and it turned out that wasn't really my style. So later we switched that around. But yeah, that's how I played the Caro-Kann, because my trainer played it, and I was 8 years old, and I had no idea what was good or what suited me. So I just played what I was told.
Right. Yeah. And I was going to say the Caro-Kann is definitely a little tame.
It's very hard if you're young and you don't know any theory, then it's not so clear what the plan is. So yeah, I think E4, E5 is a very good opening to start with because, well, you put a pawn in the center, you copy your opponent, not much can go wrong. So that's a good one to start with. But after that, I switched to the Scandinavian, which was almost even more dodgy.
Now, what do you recommend? I'm just curious what your thoughts on this for amateurs. Like what sort of openings, like for club players, let's say under 1,600 players, do you recommend certain openings? And also, how much time do you think amateurs should spend on openings? Because that's a very sort of polarizing topic, because there's a theory, well, until you're 1,800, don't spend a lot of time on openings. I tend to think that's a little overblown. I'm just curious what your stance is on that.
Yeah. Oh, this is funny because I made an opening repertoire, so I shouldn't tell people don't study openings. That would be a bit embarrassing. But yeah, I think it's true to a certain extent. I don't think you can go without studying any theory because you might lose before you even started the game. So I think you should spend some time in having a clue what to do for at least the first 5 moves, maybe a little more depending on the opening, and then use your brain and logical development move. But I don't think you can get away with studying no openings at all. I think you can overdo it. I don't think you should. You shouldn't study only openings and then once you're out of book you hang a piece. I don't think that works either. But you should definitely maybe study one opening for white and one for black. Play some games with it online to see if you like it, and then stick with it. There's no need to learn 5 different openings and then play all of them. I think just learn one and you're good to go.
Right. Yeah. No, I tend to stick to the same ones as well, but I think that's good advice. Now, I want to go back to the step-by-step because I'm curious about something. I read that with a lot of these manuals, you did the exercises several times, right? I think you alluded to that before. And I'm thinking that's almost like a woodpecker method.
Yes.
I'm not too familiar with it, but it's almost, when I read that, I'm like, it's almost like you created your own woodpecker method of doing the same exercises more than once.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, kind of like a spaced repetition. The woodpecker uses it, the Chessable uses it. I guess it works. For me, it worked quite well. And I guess it makes it more fun because you add some competition to it. Oh, will I do better the next time? Will I be faster? You kind of want to beat yourself. So if you can't play a game and beat an opponent, it's the best you can do to play against yourself.
Okay. Now, I want to move on to a couple of things that you're involved with, not so much, just actual playing, but just some chess-related organizations. So you're involved with the ChessQueens Foundation. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yes, it's a Dutch foundation. I think it was founded about 7 to 8 years ago. And the members consist of the top female players in the Netherlands. And we aim to promote women's chess. So both at the top, but also at the bottom. So we do a lot for young girls. We organize events for them. Every year we have a tournament on a beautiful location for girls only. I think we usually have like 50 girls participating who all say that they actually love having a tournament with girls only. For the top girls, I think they should definitely play mixed events But for many girls who play for fun and want to make some friends, I think it's excellent to have a place where only girls play and where they can just have fun together. We also organize training days for them. We try to do all sorts of things. It's going very well.
That must be fantastic. I mean, how are the numbers for that? There's a lot of interest, I assume?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. It's increasing. We do our best. We also, all the members really love it. It's so nice to see their enthusiasm. Sometimes the kids walk up to you and, can I please take a picture with you? It's so cute. So we try to be role models, kind of, to see that, well, chess is fun even for adults, for young kids, for everyone. Chess can be played young, old, men, women. Anyone can play it, which I think is the beauty of our game.
That's fantastic. No, that's great. Let's talk about you aiming for the WIM title, which I assume you're going for. I'm just curious what your plans are. Do you have a timeline? Are you just thinking it'll happen when it happens? What does your study regimen look like? Just curious what your game plan is for that.
Yeah, it's such a good question. I had the rating for it. So you have to have 2200 and 3 norms. So I had the rating 5 years ago already, but I only have 2 norms. My last one is from 2019. So right before COVID. And since I haven't managed to score this third one. So I hope to score it this year. I tell myself that every year. So maybe I'm not doing something right. But actually next month, I'm playing a tournament specifically designed to score a norm. So it's a closed tournament with 10 women. And they have the right mix because they need to all have titles and be of different nationalities. So they make sure that all the conditions are right. And then you just have to score the points and perform well. So with some luck, maybe I'll score my norm then. Otherwise, maybe in the summer or next year, who knows. But it's definitely my main goal right now. I'm trying to train a little more. I'm mainly doing some tactics and working on my openings. But I probably should work on strategy as well, because I don't think that's my strongest point. Or endgames. I'm somehow never as motivated to study endgames as some other things, because you're never sure will they even occur, and if they do, which ones to study. I studied some basic endgames, like the 100 Endgames You Must Know book. I finished that one, but beyond that, I should work on that more, perhaps.
Now, when you say you study openings, I'm just curious at your level, what does that look like for you? Are you studying variations like really deep? Is it just specific lines? Like what does that look like?
It really varies. For the national championship, I wanted to learn a new opening against e4 as a surprise weapon. So I studied the classical Sicilian, because I think it's not so popular compared to some other Sicilians, but you can still get these unbalanced positions where white castle's long, black castle short. You go at each other, and I thought that would suit me. So I studied that, and then I used the Chessable course and some of my own analysis. I checked some model games to see how do other people play it. I studied some variations, and my plan was to study to extra help me by playing it in some online games, but I actually didn't get to that because I don't play online so much. But I think that's a good method to try it out a bit, so that you at least get this feeling of what it would be like in a real game. What kind of problems are you facing? What are you insecure about? And it would probably have helped me, but I didn't do that. So
yeah. So you like the fight, right?
Yes.
You like those unbalanced, right? So you're not going to play like me, where you're going to get into a queenless middle game and just grind the guy until he slowly falls apart, which I love to do, but you know you're not always going to be able to do that. You like the fight. You want to totally create some wild and use your skills to overtake your opponent, so you don't have to worry about some sort of theoretical ending. Is that accurate?
That's my hope. It doesn't always happen, of course. Let me make clear, I don't have anything against slower games. I think you can easily outplay anyone there, and also with less risk. So if that's your style, then that's totally okay, right? But to me, it's very fun to fight head on and make the best player or sharpest player win. I think it also is a good strategy against stronger opponents, because, well, in a slow position, maybe it shows that they are better. They might outmaneuver you. but in a crazy mess, they will also make mistakes. If you want to beat a strong opponent, I read this once, they called it like the swamp technique. So lure them into the swamp and you're both lost, and maybe you will find the end sooner than they do. I don't remember which book it was, but I like the analogy.
Right. Well, they mention it in, I think it's Chess for Tigers too.
I think it's that one, yes.
Or How to Beat is it like How to Beat Heffalumps or something like that? I forget. I think I forget the term, but he basically says, he argues that it's basically what you said, Maaike. If you're playing a higher rated opponent, if you just play quote unquote regular chess, they're going to know all the theory and you're not going to have much of a shot. So with the higher rated opponent, you want to take him off book into a wild game. You might be uncomfortable, but so will he. That's the, or she. That's the, so it's kind of what you were saying. I'm only asking you about this just partly for selfish reasons, because I tend to be one of those positional players, but I'm trying to get more comfortable with the other side of it. Not only because I want to try to maybe change it up a little bit, but also, as we said throughout this recording so far, there are going to be times where the position doesn't call for you to grind, where you're going to have to be aggressive, or your opponent's playing something where if you don't respond aggressively, you're going to get crushed. So I'm kind of trying to expand my horizon. So I was asking that partly for selfish reasons. Oh,
that's okay. That's why you invite guests, right? So that you can learn from them.
That's it. No. Yep. So, all right. Well, anyway, good luck with the IM title. I mean, it sounds like you're close. I mean, you're like right there, right?
Yeah, it's literally one good tournament away, and then I should get it, because I had two good performances that were so good that I actually scored half a point more than I was required to. So if I'm in good form, I can do it. Sometimes I get tired. Chess is more tiring than most people think, like a full 9-round tournament, sometimes with double rounds. By the end, you're just exhausted. After the national championships, I was happy to just be at home in bed and rest.
I run a club, so we play once a week at night, but those weekend tournaments, they're tough, especially if you're playing more than one game a day. Because the problem is too, see, at the club level, like it's at night, it's after work, everyone's tired, but you know what? Everyone's in the same boat. For the weekend events, everyone's relaxed, you're in a hotel, you're basically, you're taking the elevator right to so everyone's really putting up a fight and is much more. So those weekend Swisses can be harder for that reason, because everyone is just bringing their A game.
Totally, especially if you're playing against some young, talented players who have so much more energy than, us people who have a job and maybe not as much time to work on chess as they do. It's really hard. If you play them at the end of the weekends, then it tells that they just have more energy. So in that sense, it's also good if you play some fighting games, because maybe they're over relatively quickly, so you can save some energy for the other games.
It's funny too, when you change up your style. Like there are times we all go through this where you're feeling impatient or whatever reason, and you play a little more risky than you would, and you're like, oh God, I think I'm pushing too hard. But then you end up like blowing your opponent off the board because he either gets nervous or like it's better than you. And when it happens, it's like, wow, like how can I harness that all the time? But I know what you're saying. Like it can really, you can really steamroll your opponent. And like you said earlier, even if your attack can be defended against easily, your opponent may not think that. And like you said, he'll play those like H6 moves or those, G6, those weakening pawn moves, thinking they're defending. But like you said, down the road, it just makes things worse, and you just end up with a simple attack.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if they do find a good defensive moves, it might take them a lot of time. So then maybe 10 moves later, they will suddenly blunder. So even if it doesn't pay off right away, you will still have chances.
So let's talk about Chessable. And I want to start with your role as VP of content, maybe like how you got involved with Chessable and then what your responsibilities are in that position.
Yeah, I've been involved at Chessable for quite a while. The company is not that old. I think it was founded in 2016 and was very small at the start. And in 2018, I was working for New in Chess. And then one day the CEO of Chessable came to the office and they had a meeting and decided that some of the books from New in Chess would be published on the Chessable platform. And they asked me to work on that, so edit them so that it would look nice. So that's what I did, and I really liked the work, and I was intrigued by the platform. So in 2019, I switched jobs and started working for them. And then every year, the company grew massively, and I got promoted almost every year because I had the most experience, and I was really excited about all the opportunities. So first, I became a quality checker. So instead of the editing, I would also check the work of others and make sure it looked good. Then I became a manager, meaning I would manage the editors and tell them which projects to work on and talk to authors. And then as we grew even more, by then the content team had like 30, 40 people. I got promoted to VP of content, which means that aside from my boss, the CEO Geert van der Velde, me and my colleague Juan Almaguer, we run the publishing teams. We have 4 teams at Chessable, 2 English ones and a German one and a Spanish one. The German one is relatively new. So if you speak German or Spanish, we also have content in those languages. And my job is really diverse. I talk to plenty of different people, whether it's authors, people from our own company, developers thinking about new features. I manage the publishing schedule, so we publish 3 courses a week, and that has to be planned neatly. And now we recently were acquired by Chess.com. They bought the Play Magnus Group. So now we're also going to work with them, which is an exciting new step. So many interesting challenges ahead for the company.
So let's talk about your Nimzo course on Chessable, which I think is great, the Fierce Nimzo-Indian.
Yes.
I have some questions and comments, but I'd like you to kind of talk about it first. So,
as a little girl, or not so little, it was always my dream to publish my own book. Then there wasn't such a thing as online platforms. So I was always focused on writing a traditional book or maybe an article in a magazine. It just seemed really cool to me to be published. So when I was working for Chessable, I saw how many authors get published. And so I just asked one day, can I do a course? And they said, yeah, sure, that's cool. So I started working on it. It took me about 6 months, I believe. I learned a lot from it. I also understood much better what all the authors are going through, what is difficult for them, how does the video recording process work, because I didn't know much about the video aspect. So in that sense, it was also really enlightening. And it was so fun. I also used the lines to play myself. That doesn't always go well. But I think it's really helpful because, for example, last month I played in the Dutch League and I played a 2300 opponent, and I wasn't prepared for him at all because you don't know your opponent beforehand. And he played this line of the Nimzo that happened to be one of my main lines in the 4 Queen C2 variation. And I played a move that he had never seen before, but I remembered it from my course. So because I spent so much time analyzing it, I could remember much more lines and use it. And in the end, I even won the game against a higher rated opponent. So I was very happy that I can use that knowledge in some of my games. It's actually useful for me as a person as well.
right. And what's good in looking at it, you explain the written prose is very good. Like it's very thorough.
Thank you.
In explaining the ideas. And yeah, I mean, I've dipped my toe into it. I haven't gotten into it as much as I've wanted to. I mean, I have the course, but from what I've seen so far, it's very, very good. And we were talking earlier in sort of the pre-interview. What I like about your course, you focus a lot on D6 and B6, and then fianchettoing the bishop on B7. You plant the knight on E4, lock it in with F5, which is how I normally play anyway, rather than the traditional D5 line. So, I mean, maybe you could talk a little bit about that and how you address that in the course.
Yeah, it's so interesting because D5 is what all the grandmasters play these days. It's equalizing and solid, but when you look at a database, these B6 stuff is actually what is most played. I think many people don't realize that because all the top players are playing this other stuff. So I think, especially at a club player, club player level, this is really effective because you keep playing the same moves, as you say. You put your pawns on the dark squares, and then you push F5, and that already sets you up. Oh, where should I look at? Well, maybe it's the king side. Sometimes you can even go g5 or queen g5 and start an attack. And it's really easy to play for black, in my opinion, at least. And apparently you like it too, so I hope many others will agree with us.
Right. And that's one of the main reasons why I asked you on. Like, see, when I invite a guest, it's not so much, oh, I'm going to ask this person just because of this. There's usually some type of hook. Like there's a reason that makes me say, I want. And the fact that your Nimzo course is focusing on that B6, that fianchetto idea with 94, you don't see that a lot. And that's how I play. So that's why I wanted to speak about it. But what you just said, and I know we spoke earlier before I pressed record, is at the club level, when I get that knight on E4 as black, and then I push F5, locking it in, that knight's not easy to budge because, F3, you got to be careful because, what is it, Queen H4 check?
Yes.
Right? Even like 17, 1800, 1900 players, like stronger club players, they get very uncomfortable in that position. And it's like you said, it's very comfortable. And then you can go, Queen G6 or whatever it is, you can shuffle the queen to the king side, start an attack. And like I said, just seeing a queen or a rook on that G file or F file can force white to make some kind of erroneous defensive move. But I think it's a great way to play. It's hard to get a bad middle game with that. Like once you get in F5 and you lock in that knight, black just has a very comfortable position.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also very easy because you can always play that. And for white does not have such a straightforward plan. Of course, we're not claiming black is better already. White can do plenty of different things, but it's not so clear what to do. So if you're not sure, you just make a few moves. And in the meantime, black makes all these developing, improving moves. And suddenly you are worse because you didn't do much and black actually executed all the plans already. So practically speaking, I think it's more difficult for white if they're not prepared. Of course, if you play at a grandmaster level, they will do differently. But my course is not aimed at grandmasters. I'm not a grandmaster myself, so pretending that I can, recommend stuff for them would be a bit silly. So it's aimed at club players. And I also check the lead chess games for that reason. So I check what is most played at their level, because often those games go in a totally different direction than whatever is in the real on the board database. But I think most people play online. At least they play many more games online because you can just do it from home. After a day of work, you just play 2 or 3 games. So yeah, I try to address those things too and see what is more common there and give some extra attention to common mistakes or common moves at that level.
So everyone knows it's called the Fierce Nimzo-Indian. It's on Chessable. We're going to put links for all this stuff in the show notes. And Maaike, you're also going to be working, or you're going to actually start recording it soon, another course against D4 where white plays knight F3. So can you tell us about that a little bit? Can we get a little bit of a preview?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I got many requests for this, and also for my own repertoire. Now I was covered against 3 knight C3, but against 3 knight F3, I was still struggling a bit, especially against the Catalan. I find that a very hard opening to deal with at club level. If you're a positional player, play the Catalan with white, your opponents will not know what to do. I'm like close to 2200. I didn't know what to do against the Catalan, and no one ever played it against me, so I got away with it. But yeah, if you're a club player, I think the Catalan might be your worst nightmare. So the course will actually cover that as well, and also all these other openings like the London, the Jobava London, the Trompovskis. It's like anything within D4 that's not 3 knight C3 is in there. So now I have a full 1D4 repertoire for black for myself and for everyone else who is interested.
Oh, great. Oh, I'm definitely going to pick that one up. So then I'll be set because, yeah. Well, no, I'm just curious to see the knight F3 lines because that's true. The Catalan is as black can be, if you're not familiar with it, it can be very tricky. Like, because, white fianchettos and like you said, black often doesn't know what to do. And so it's funny you say that because for a long time, I try to go into a closed Catalan where you get in like C6 or something. It's very locked, but at least it doesn't give white much.
Yeah,
or I try to block. I try to blunt the diagonal as much as possible. I don't know if that's the best way to play.
No, it's very logical. It's actually not what I'm recommending. I'm recommending the Vienna against 3 knight f3. So that goes 3 knight f3, d5, knight c3, and then you take the pawn on c4. Yeah, there's this very trendy line. If white plays e4, then black plays the crazy looking move b5. And this has been played by Nepomniachtchi a lot, Nakamura, I think Duda played it. It's very trendy and aggressive, double-edged, just my style. And against the Catalan, this is why I'm also taking on c4 there, so that it's consistent. And we will try to play knight c6, a6, and b5 to defend the pawn. So you're kind of telling white, well, if you're not getting it back, we're staying a pawn up, and you prove the compensation. So it's also putting the ball in their court, which I think is challenging, but it might not be everyone's style. That's, of course, true. If you like to block the diagonal, that's very smart and safe, because definitely it has cost me points when I didn't know what to do. And then you're just looking at that bishop and thinking, oh, no, I can't move any of my queenside pieces. Help.
Right. Yeah. I mean, smart and safe is good, but I probably do that a little too much. But, well, I mean, smart and safe at the amateur level, I'll argue anyway, it will get you very far, but, up to a point. I mean, if you're only playing players under 1800, simply not blundering is, that's going to take you a long way, but it gets to a point where against stronger players, you're not going to be able to get away with that.
That's true. It's a good skill, though. Like, just not blundering to any two-move tactics will get you so far, because that's how so many games are decided. Even at any level, if you miss a tactic, it's just over. So, yeah, that's definitely good advice. Don't blunder.
Yeah, because I was listening, or I forget if it was a video somewhere, some content where someone was saying, my opponent was like 1800 or 1950, and he dropped a pawn, or I can't believe he lost a pawn to this simple two-move tactic. And just as an amateur player, as someone who runs a chess club, I'm thinking 1900 and 2000 players drop pawns to two-move tactics all the time.
Totally.
All the time. I'm like, stop thinking your opponent is like 1900 is like some chess. They miss like basic tactics. They'll drop a pawn all the time.
Totally. Yeah, I think that happens a lot. Let's say you're looking at someone who's 100 points higher than you. It doesn't matter what rating you are, but there's this psychological feeling. You think, whoa, they're really good. They're so much better than me. They must never blunder or do this and this so much better than I do. But then sometimes, they have bad days too, or they also have their weaknesses. They're not gods. Any player is beatable.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the right attitude. So for this last segment, I want to talk about improvement a little bit, and specifically, and we touched on this a little bit, but I'm hoping you can go into a little bit more depth, how sort of quote unquote safe positional players like myself can get more comfortable with an aggressive or attacking style. Because, as we mentioned a few times, there are going to be times where that's what's required of the position, where, you're going to have to step it up and you're going to have to be aggressive, and that's the best idea. So what are some ways that, amateurs can improve in that area?
Yeah, this is a really good topic. So many people, when they think of the word aggressive, they think of sacrificing pieces, sacrificing pawns. You don't need to sacrifice anything. If that's not your thing, then that's okay. Of course, if it's winning by force, then you shouldn't shy away from it just because you're scared. If you can calculate that it wins, then just go for it. But you can play aggressively even without sacrificing. So you don't need to play the King's Gambit or the Mora Gambit just to get an aggressive game. You can play normal openings, and the main thing is just to place your pieces very actively, because if they're on active squares, they can go all over the board and so many more opportunities pop up. So the main thing is focus on activating your pieces. If you don't know what to do, activate a piece. And if it attacks something, maybe you just attack a pawn or a piece, and then they have to move it away. And then on the next move, maybe you do something active again. And it keeps them busy. They have to react while you're acting. And then you can easily set up an attack even without sacrificing, just by moving your pieces to good squares, you just bring them a little closer to the enemy's king. You don't need to do anything crazy. Like, you don't need to go g4, g5 in every game and then leaving weaknesses behind and lose. If it works, that's great. You have to pay attention. Oh, can my opponent do much? If they are passive and can't do anything, you can start pushing pawns and go for an attack. But if they have some counterplay, then maybe just play normal moves. I would recommend not to play aggressive just because you can and like it, because that will backfire. Trust me, I've been there. Have you ever had that you think, oh, this move looks really interesting. It's probably not good, but it looks so fun. And then you play it, and then indeed it's not good.
Yeah, I used to. Now I'm a wimp.
Well, I think it's relatable.
now I'm like, yeah, like 6 years ago, I would have played this. I mean, it depends. I mean, if it's a swindle, or if I'm in time, you know what I'm saying? If I think, but I know what you mean. It's like, oh, why did I play that? It's like with the Catalan. Oh, why didn't I just blunt the diagonal?
Yeah, exactly. That you later think, how on earth could I have thought of this? It's so awful. But yeah, sometimes you're just tempted. But yeah, I think staying calm helps. Like, even if it looks interesting, maybe double check if you're not accidentally blundering.
So, what I think that's interesting, Maaike, is that you're basically saying, like, stylistically, you don't necessarily have to play a more quote unquote aggressive opening or gambit. You can stick with the repertoire you have.
Yes.
Just make some tweaks within that. Like, just be more conscious of being aggressive about like what squares your pieces are on, and maybe like look for an advanced square for a knight. Yeah. Like that, like, because it's interesting. I thought maybe you were going to talk about play certain openings. Basically, what you're saying is just be more conscious of the squares that your pieces are on, rather than just simply developing them.
Yeah, I think I can recommend you should all play the Najdorf or another sharp opening, but yeah, I think that's too big of a step, right? You're not looking for that. You're looking for some small actionable stuff that you can implement, because, well, your next guest might recommend a different opening, so then you're all confused. Well, which one is it? So yeah, I think you can play the Najdorf if you like. I would say if you want to get more unbalanced position, you can. I would say maybe go for openings where the structure is not completely symmetrical, so that there's something different between black and white, so that you have something to play for. Of course, your opponent will also have that, but just something to exploit. So if you play the Caro-Kann, maybe not play these lines where you go knight f6 and then white takes on f6 and you take back with the e-pawn and then you have like these pawns there. It's very solid, but yeah, that's hard to make aggressive, I think. But you can still play normal openings. If you like the Caro-Kann, you can still play all sorts of variations and still have a good time. I think Tal even sometimes played the Caro-Kann. I think he had a quote once, and now if this was someone else, I'm going to look super embarrassing. So I hope this was correct. He said, I played a Sicilian to draw, but I played a Caro-Kann to win. I think that's what he said once, but okay. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought that was a good one. So yeah, you don't need to completely change your repertoire. If you just want to start small and attack a little bit more, just play normal moves, put your pieces on active squares, and opportunities might pop up. I think especially at the club level, your opponent might just make some small mistakes and suddenly you can have an attack without the risk that you might be afraid of.
Yeah, and when you put your pieces on good squares, like in other words, if you have a choice, well, I could put it on this square, which is a little passive, this square, that can cause a mistake also, right? It's not so much that you have to quote unquote attack, but just by putting your pieces on more active squares than your opponents, they might choke.
Yeah, you just control more squares in their camp, so they have less options, right? So maybe if you're considering to put your bishop on from f8 on e7 or d6, maybe pick d6, then you're looking at the h2 pawn, and if they're castles, maybe you can attack already. So small things like that. Don't do this in every position, you might just blunder, but it really doesn't have to be one big change, because well, if that just doesn't suit you and then you lose a bad game, then you probably get totally demotivated. And we don't want that. Chess should be fun first and foremost. If you think positional chess is the most fun, then don't change. But if you think, whoa, maybe I will lose sometimes, but I will have this one attacking brilliancy that I can show to everyone at my club and brag about forever, then this is your shot. Play attacking chess.
Now, what do you do? Let's say you're playing, I'm curious how you would handle this. Let's say you're playing someone and it's like a must-win, quote unquote, must-win situation. Like you really want to win, but it's like a very even end game.
Oof.
And do you just keep sort of grind? Do you just take a draw there, or how do you shuffle? Do you how do you handle those positions? Like, what's your thought process there?
I would definitely play on. I'm known to genuinely play on in like any position. I don't like to take draws. I have a friend of mine who, even when the opponent is like +3 in scores, then he will still play on even if he's losing. But I think I wouldn't take a draw, but I also don't know what I would do. Maybe, just keep playing and hoping for a mistake. I think, you definitely have to play on, and you shouldn't act too fast. I think you should just make very slow moves because that increases the odds that they will make a mistake. So just maneuver around a little bit and maybe they will put something on a wrong square. Maybe advance your pawns a little slowly, so not right away. I think Magnus Carlsen would do this too, right? He wouldn't, if he sees there's maybe one possible option that could hopefully give some winning chances, he won't go for it right away because then they will see right through it. No, you play around for 10, 20 moves and maybe then go for it, and then maybe they're not paying attention or they're tired or they are low on time by then. So I would say don't act too fast. Some people, when you feel like you have to win, you're going crazy because you feel like you have to. But by just keep on playing, you might end up winning and all the same.
Right. So just kind of wait for them to drop the ball. But you don't like taking an easy draw in the end game.
No.
You want to try to fight it out, right?
No, unless you think you might be the one who's losing, I wouldn't take the draw. If you feel like you won't lose unless you blunder big time, I wouldn't take the draw. I would play on. I think you have to believe in yourself a bit. There are players who would take a draw even when they're much better, maybe because the opponent is slightly higher rated and they're nervous, but you already got there. You got a better position. You're clearly playing better than them. So keep playing, because a draw is great, but beating a high opponent, let's say you get the chance to beat a titled player, take the chance because you'll never forget it. You can brag about it forever. You say, well, I had a draw against them. It doesn't sound the same, but say, whoa, I beat a national master once. It's like, whoa, that's so impressive. So I would always take the chance. Better to lose once and win once than 2 draws, in my opinion.
Someone said, isn't that like someone, what is it? If I play 2 games, I'd rather go like 1-0 than half or something.
I'm sure people say that.
I'm butchering the quote, but it's something along the lines of, your philosophy of playing on for the win. Maaike, I'm going to let you go. I don't want to keep you too long. I really appreciate your insight. So for everyone out there, again, the Chessable course is the Fierce Nimzo-Indian. We're going to put links for that. And then soon, Maaike is coming out with a repertoire that covers 3 knight f3. And you said that's going to be focused on the Vienna, correct?
Yes. And yes, as I mentioned, it will cover other sidelines in d4 as well. So basically anything in d4 that's not a Nimzo, it will be in that course.
Okay. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thank you so much.
It was great fun. It was nice chatting with you. And I hope people learned something. And if not, then I hope they at least enjoyed it.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely did. No, I definitely picked up some great insight. I look forward to playing this back. I always like playing it back because when I record, it's like I'm obviously I'm listening, but it's hard like to really process. It's just different because I'm thinking, do I ask this? Like, what's the thing? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so much else going on. So when I play it back, like one of the things I enjoy doing is playing it back in my car, like when I'm away from my computer, because then I can, because then I'm purely listening to it. And then I'll pick things up that I didn't. But So I really look forward to kind of playing this back and absorbing it. So all of you out there, we really appreciate you listening. We'll have links for everything in the show notes, and I hope you win your next game. Have a great day, everybody.